Okay, when you're ready.
Here's your handout for the presentation.
Just
so you've got a better view of the slides if you want to read on. So this is Unit 18, Understanding Client Relationships and Public Relations. So obviously it's all about your personal relationship with clients and how you can build it and how you can maintain it the best you possibly can. So outcome 1, understand how to have professional working relationships with public relations clients. Obviously this is really important. You need to know how to maintain them, establish them, you know, and just keep them working, because otherwise everything will just fall apart. So I put down a couple of methods to establish working relationships with your clients. So obviously when you first start to work with them, ensure that you introduce yourself and your team in a professional manner, whether it's over email, so you can just email them and say like, for example, I'm Kat, and like the Redstone team would say like, I'm Kat and I'd be working with Claire and Alex, and this is what we would be doing. If you need to contact us, these are our email addresses and these are our numbers, just so like if there was ever an emergency, the client's got everything there. And it also means you don't have to troll through emails and everything, you know, to try and find an email address or a number, which can be quite annoying. Obviously set a good impression. So when you first meet them, dress professionally, sound professional. Bye. Obviously set a good impression. This also shows the client that you're going to be reliable and trustworthy. So obviously in the first we usually kind of do like a trial month. Like here at Scout, we say like the first month's obviously the really vital part, so you need to ensure that you're always there to answer all the calls of the clients, make sure you answer all the emails like straight away, make sure you're sending over as much as possible. Even in the window, like if you've pitched to a client and then you're waiting for their feedback back or you're waiting for their decision, that window can be really good to like almost help you get what you want, because if you send them over like pictures and all the rest of it, kind of shows them like, oh well, even though we're not working with you, you're still trying really hard, which I think is really good anyway. And obviously know your background research, because if you meet a client for the first time, the one thing you can't do is just sit there and be like, well, we don't know what you do and we don't know who you are and we don't know any of your services. Whereas if you've done all that research, it shows dedication also to the client, I think, as well. Obviously to maintain relationships, like I said before, you need to be there for your clients. So if they phone you, be there. Be available to talk to. Like if they've got a problem, whether it's a half an hour conversation. For example, like Claire, her call was only meant to last 15 minutes, but by being there for the allotted time the client needed to be there, it shows again you're reliable and you're trustworthy, and it just builds that relationship, because it shows that if the client ever needed something, then they could come to you. Updates, I think this is really important as well. So whether or not it's coverage or progress with work, just so the client doesn't need to like chase you for things. So if you've had like an article for a week, so they're not like ringing you and going, where is it? Maybe email them and just say, this is the progress on the piece of work. We're just reviewing it internally first. You'll get it by Tuesday. And it just shows them like the timescale of when to expect something. And also coverage as well, like just letting them know, because it's almost like a nice feeling, especially like last thing on a Friday. If you've secured like a good piece of coverage, just sending them over and just saying like, here's the link, and then especially like here we do like recommended social media updates, so it's even less work for them really, so they can just copy and paste our tweets onto their social media. So it's all, I think it's about like the little things as well. And then obviously being professional, like constantly upholding like a professional atmosphere with them, like a relationship, but also creates a good personal relationship with the client as well, so they feel more at ease speaking to you and they're more relaxed. They don't have to, so they can feel okay calling you, they don't have to like just drop you an email instead. Outcome 2, understand how to resolve conflicts with public relations clients. So the scenario I've given is, if you have a press release or an article and you run that without the full approval from the client, even if you get approval from, say, the marketing manager, who's your first port of contact, often somebody either higher than them or from a different section of the company, which we've had previously, can turn around and go, actually that's not been approved by us, and then all of a sudden then it can create conflicts, because then we're having to pull it back from the press, which obviously can be sometimes not very easy to do, especially if it's been already published, or if you've already promised it to a journalist, you're going to have to go back but it's also, it can damage relationships with journalists as well as the client, so you need to be very sensitive towards the situation, towards both parties. So you have to obviously, if the client disagrees with the information as well, even if there's a way of so obviously following through to the next point about how to resolve things, if you were to try and resolve that situation, obviously try and pull it back from the media, or if there was a clip of information they don't agree with, you could always try and contact the journalist or the publication, and just say to them, look, our client doesn't like that stat, but here's another piece of information which we've rewritten that little small bit, so all you need to do is copy and paste and change that. So obviously you're not saying to the journalist then you have to pull it back completely, you just have to amend it slightly, but again, you've done all the work. So and then another way to resolve it would, obviously, if somebody comes back to you, you haven't had approval on that, ensure you've got an email saying that this is the approved. Recently we've had a case study with Aon through Redstone, and we put that out to the Insurance People magazine, which we thought we were allowed to do. We've got the email saying it's all been approved and everything, this is fine, it's all been finalised and it's ready to go out to the press. However, somebody higher up than our port of call disagreed with it and didn't want it going out to that press, so obviously then we had to go back and put back from that magazine, but obviously then they wanted proof of approval, but if we sent that over them straight away, then they were better with the situation. They found that, actually it has been approved, you're only following what you're doing, we haven't just gone off the rails and just done what we wanted to do. Obviously, again, communicating with your client and assuring them that you're going to sort out the situation, but also how the client wants you to resolve the situation would be really important as well, because if they want you to do a certain thing, obviously if you've upset them or caused conflict with them, then going to them going, well, how would you prefer us to sort out the situation, or would you prefer any certain actions to be taken? And if you take into consideration what they feel and everything else, obviously can pull back the relationship, because you're listening to them and all the rest of it. And Unit 3, understand how to assess working relationships with public relations clients. So I've just put a few examples down of how you can assess your relationship with clients. A good one which we do is review meetings, so obviously every 6 months or every 12 months we'll go in and have a big meeting with the client, and we'll go through plans, we'll show them results, we'll just talk them through everything we've done and obviously how we've spent the money and all the rest of it. But then they can also, by having an open conversation, it allows the client to be completely honest and say well, you've done this well and you haven't done that well. But it all so basically overall you're assessing your relationship with the client, but they can also say how they feel and whether or not obviously from that you can gauge whether or not your relationship is working or if it's not. I put how they communicate with you as well. Do they feel comfortable coming straight to you, or do they always go to somebody else first and then get them to talk to you about it? Obviously, if they do that, then you haven't got a great relationship with your client. However, if they come straight to you, then you can tell that they trust you and you find you reliable, and obviously they feel at ease with you. Also, I find that if they prefer to ring you over just emailing you, I find that a little bit more personal as well, because then again they feel comfortable with you. And And obviously if they carry on working with you, like if your 6-month review's up and they continue to work with you, then obviously you've got a good relationship there with your client. And obviously if not, then I'd always recommend to find out why. That's what we do here at Scout. If somebody chooses not to carry on working with us, we like to find out why, and then obviously you can improve that for your other clients' experiences with you. And then methods of accurately recording work done for clients. So we do plans, obviously like the big complicated spreadsheets that can over confuse clients, but we've started putting them onto Word documents. They're really easy to understand and very straight to the point. So you can either do them weekly. So if you have a weekly call with a client, it's really good to send over agendas for calls. So just saying like, this is what we've done this week and this is what we're going to talk about on the call, just so they can read everything first, and then it shortens their time down on the call as well, so you're not keeping them on for ages. Then obviously monthly and quarterly, so they know what's coming up and what to expect, and then if they don't agree with something, they can always come back to you and you can change it. Coverage reports, obviously if you like for grassroots, for example, we've just done a big we've done the launch for their phone scheme, their salary sacrifice scheme. We aim to get 19 pieces of coverage and we've achieved that, but we've put it into a coverage report so you can see screenshots of the coverage, you've got links so you can click straight through, and then obviously you've got all the metrics as well. So you can, the client can gauge how valuable that piece of coverage is. For example, like we got in the Telegraph and the Daily Mail. So you can gauge against other pieces of more like employee benefits magazines, which is a very industry focused magazine, so you can kind of tell, and then obviously it shows then to the client how well you've done. And then obviously end of month reports, which we do for many of our clients, so it just again tells them what you've done that month, where the money's gone, and then obviously all the results from it, and then the actions from it as well, so how many things have been submitted. For example, we have response sources come through from Features Exec. So when we get them, we send, and if there's a good one, we send it off to a client that will put them on the monthly report just to show them how many opportunities as well we've given to them. And then also it's good from our point of view to see how many opportunities they've worked with us on, so we know where to go in future and where just to rein it back a little bit, because some clients don't always respond or help you with information, especially on that tight cover turnarounds. So it's always worth knowing, I think. But yeah, that's about it really. I've got a feedback form for you here, and if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask.
Fab, thank you. I'll do your feedback form in a minute. I'm just going to leave that recording while I ask you a few questions, because I have got a few on your presentation. So you said that one of the methods that you use to communicate with your clients is like a meeting.
Yeah.
What's the advantages and the disadvantages of having a meeting?
Obviously the advantages are that you can find out a lot of information rather than over an email or just over a phone conversation, because also you can judge their body language as well, so you can find out whether or not it's going to be a good meeting or a bad meeting. And it's also obviously it's a lot more personal, and I always find that you can sort out a lot more than over the phone, because you're there and you can show them evidence and of how like things can work and all the rest of it. I think the disadvantages, obviously, if it's a meeting in London and where we're based, it can take time, and it can cost quite a bit. Like we've got some our grassroots clients, they're based in Bath, so to get there and back is quite expensive. So I'd probably say they're the disadvantages if having a long distance client. But apart from that, I think they're a really good method to communicate with clients.
Absolutely, and it really does show kind of your commitment to them when they can see that you're making the effort to go down there. And actually, those meetings in Bath, it is, like you say, it is time consuming, it's expensive, but at the same time,
it shows that you're there and you're reliable. So
absolutely,
it's definitely worth it.
It's just really builds on that relationship, really.
Yeah.
Presentation's really good. You're very confident in the delivery of that, so well done. And the fact that Claire interrupted, you coped with that absolutely fine as well. You weren't kind of thrown off by the next part of the delivery of your presentation. just a few questions on the presentation itself. So rather than on the client working relationships, more on the presentation skills side of things. What sort of success criteria did you give yourself for delivering this presentation today?
I'd say obviously it was to create a good presentation.
Yeah.
And then to hit all the points in the criteria, like make sure I've got all the main points in the presentation itself, like keywords, like the outcome titles, just so I can, as I'm reading it, I know which points I need to focus on and all the rest of it. So I try not to leave anything out, and obviously not to put too much on the slides, so it doesn't look like I'm just reading. Then obviously know what the unit's about as well.
And it didn't look like you were just reading from the slides.
That's fine.
So that's a good thing. That's a good thing. If you were to, I know you've given me a feedback form which I will fill out for you.
Thank you.
But other than that, you know, can you think of any actions that you would do to improve on your presentation skills?
Possibly making it a bit more visual. Like maybe I could have, I did think about putting some screenshots in of different plans and everything, but obviously it's one of them where I didn't want to overcomplicate the presentation. I'd rather just speak about it and explain it, but sometimes it's nicer just to have the visuals so you can just see it for yourself. So maybe just like a few screenshots so it's not just black and white, I'd probably say.
Yeah, that would be good. I also think that if you were to do the presentation again, even though there's not a lot of content on them slides, there is still a lot of content on the slides.
Yeah.
So if you were to do the presentation again, I would kind of strip back the slides a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe use some visuals as opposed to lots of words. But at the same time, you weren't looking at the screen. I was focused on you rather than the screen, because you were using body language and you delivered the presentation clearly and confidently. So I was more engaged with you than I was the screen anyway.
Yeah.
But it's just bear in mind that when you're doing presentations to a large audience, you don't want to lose the attention of the audience by having a lot of writing on your slides. That's the only thing that I would say, really. If you were doing a presentation with more than one person, how would you go about managing the transitions between yourself and the other person?
I was in that presenting.
If you were co-presenting, or if there was someone presenting after you, how would you go about managing that transition?
Obviously, like if somebody was like coming on after me, I probably say like maybe merge your PowerPoints into one, so then you're not having to fiddle around with computers, like set one up and then set another one up if you were using visual aids. So just so it rolls into the next one kind of thing. If I was doing it with somebody else, I'd probably say for that, obviously practice. So you're not just staring at each other and not knowing like who's going to talk when, or maybe just like delegate slides to one another. So like take it in turns, like one does a slide and the other does a slide, and then make sure you're both speaking for like an allotted time. So say throughout the presentation you're both speaking for at least 5 minutes, because then it gives you both the opportunity to speak and obviously get like the airtime.
That's it. And I think that's important, that especially when you've got a large audience, that transitions are managed. I know that when we do a lot of presentations at the PRCA, especially our kind of annual conference, with that we collate all the presentations prior and put them on a master presentation, just to manage that transition process better.
Otherwise it can be quite clunky and it's not great for the audience watching. Like, you can lose interest. So
absolutely, and people do lose interest when, for Christ's sake, this is really unprofessional, and that's the attitude that people have when there isn't a smooth transition. So fab answer. So from that presentation, you've pretty much covered the whole of Unit 10 and 18. What I would like to see is some of these records that you use with your clients.
Yeah.
So if you could upload a coverage report, an end of month report, and either a weekly, monthly, quarter plan, to Unit 18, so we can see some product evidence of how you do work, create those working relationships with your clients. And then Unit 10, we do need two presentations, so we'll discuss how we're going to get the evidence for the next one.
Yeah.
In a minute. All right.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Thank you.